The Cambridge Dictionary defines janky as very bad in quality or condition. The elevator in the library is very janky. Her physical revealed what you might call a janky elbow. But what is jank in Magic the Gathering? I'm Tom, aka Overfiend, and I'd like you to join me in taking a look at some of my favourite examples of jank in my own collection, and then we can have a chat about what there is to love about these weird, old, useless, janky cards. Roll the intro. Yeah. Intro. Title card? Title card? We live in a world where there are so many staple cards that everyone's deck kind of starts looking the same, but it's for good reason. They are the best cards at doing what they do. But if you dig under the surface just a little bit, you can find some hidden gems. Since the beginning of the game, there have been bad cards, but with the inception of Commander, we have ways to create board states where these useless cards can become playable or even powerful. A great example of this that you'll all be familiar with right now is Shuko. This one-cost artifact equipment from Betrays of Kamigawa gives equipped creature +1/+0 and has 0 equip cost. It's pretty weak for an equipment, but in the recent Modern set, for Modern Horizons 3, we had Nadu, who took this pretty useless common and turned it into an extremely powerful card in the 99. Yes, I know it was a powerful Modern deck as well, and I know Shuko goes in other decks. This is a disclaimer, I'm just talking about Commander. Let's get on with it. So let's define jank in MTG, because there's a difference between jank and trash. I asked a bunch of my friends what they think jank is, and one point that stood out to me is that a jank card is hyper-specific to a certain situation or commander, but also underused and sometimes overcosted. Jank also is typically old, having not been reprinted in often tens of years. It is at this point that I have to do the like and subscribe thing, so please click the buttons, I'd really appreciate it. So now we know what jank is, let's take a look at some of my favourites. I'm very excited to show you these, so let's get into it. First up, let's go with one of my favourite decks of all time, Minn, Wily Illusionist. She's 1 and 2 blue for a legendary creature gnome wizard, and she's a 1/3. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 blue illusion creature token with this creature gets +1/+0 for each other illusion you control. Whenever an illusion you control dies, you may put a permanent card with mana value less than or equal to that creature's power from your hand onto the battlefield. And there are currently 5,329 Minn decks on EDH Rec. So with this deck, I want ways of drawing 2 or more cards each turn, and ways to sacrifice the illusions when they're big enough to cheat out expensive permanents. This began as a budget deck for me, but has really spiraled out of control and become one of my most played decks, and it's really solidified mono blue as one of my favourite colours. But just because this deck is powerful doesn't mean there aren't some weird cards in there. Fade Away is a sorcery for 2 and a blue, and it reads, for each creature its controller sacrifices opponent lest they pay 1. It's currently played in 630 Minn decks. So against go-wide decks, this could be a pretty devastating board wipe if they're all tapped out. And it's unusual in blue as a colour that relies mostly on mass bounce effects for their board wipes. But this also has an upside for Minn, whereby we can just pay for the few creatures we want to keep, including herself, and let our illusions perish and trigger her ability multiple times. A recent addition to this deck that I'm pretty excited about discovering is Junkyo Bell. If you know me at all, you'll know how much I love the old Kamigawa block, so I'll take any excuse to run cards from it. This is an artifact for 4 mana, and it reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target creature you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. If you do, sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. It's only played in 27 Minn decks. So in our Minn deck, we give one of our illusions +X/+X and have a potentially huge attacker. And then at the end of the turn, we have to sacrifice it, letting us cheat in a way more expensive card than we would have been able to without that power toughness increase. And I also got a nice foil of it because I'm obsessed. Moving on to something more recent, Eluge the Shoreless Sea from Bloomburrow is 1 and 3 blue for a legendary creature elemental fish. It's a star. Eluge's power and toughness are each equal to the number of islands you control. Whenever Eluge enters or attacks, put a flood counter on target land. It's an island in addition to its other types for as long as it has a flood counter on it. The first instant or sorcery spell you cast each turn costs blue or 1 colourless less to cast for each land you control with a flood counter on it. There are currently 3,260 Eluge decks on EDH Rec. This is a deck that loves playing instants and sorceries for a huge discount and beating people in the face with a massive fish, so I don't know what more you could want than that really. Sea Singer is 1 and 2 blue for a creature merfolk. It's a 0/1. When you control no islands, sacrifice Sea Singer. You may choose not to untap Sea Singer during your untap step. tap, gain control of target creature whose controller controls an island for as long as you control Sea Singer and Sea Singer remains tapped. It's played in 39 Eluge decks. So this is a card I found in my collection while I was sorting, and I realised how powerful it could be in this deck. Since Eluge can make other people's lands into islands with his flood counters, even if our opponents aren't running any blue at all, their creatures could still be ours. So I'll be taking that at Tali, thank you very much. Warbarge is 4 mana for an artifact that says 3, target creature gains Island Walk until end of turn. When Warbarge leaves the battlefield this turn, destroy that creature. A creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated. And it's played in 34 Eluge decks. When building this deck, I was looking for repeatable ways of giving Island Walk, and believe it or not, it's pretty slim pickings out there. I stumbled on this and thought it was perfect. Again, we can target our opponent's land, so regardless of if they run blue or not, we're getting the fishy through. Let's mix it up a bit. Instead of talking about janky cards and the commanders that run them, let's talk about a janky commander. My Skeleton Ship deck is my pride and joy. I even have one signed by Mr. Gavin Verhey of Wizards of the Coast. I found this legend early on in my return to the game and really obsessed over it. I had to find a way to make it work because just look at it, how could I not? It's 3 blue-black for a legendary creature skeleton. When you control no islands, sacrifice Skeleton Ship, and it has tap, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and it's a 0/3. The deck went through a few iterations. Initially it was a turbo untap deck, so I had every way to untap permanents in blue and black. It was fairly consistent too. I could get repeatable untaps on my commander and machine gun down everyone else's creatures. The only problem is then I'd be left with a 0/3 that couldn't really do anything. Yes, the consistency came at the cost of having only a single card in the deck that could potentially let me win, and that wasn't really fun at all, so the deck kind of sat in the box unplayable. Then came All Be One, a poison counter heavy set, and with all the proliferating involved in that working with the counter Skelly Ship could deal out, I thought the Infect might be the way to go. So I filled the deck with the most disgusting Dimir Infect cards you could think of. What's the worst that could happen? It's a janky deck, so no one's going to target me, are they? So maybe that wasn't the best idea. When you run Infect, you're typically going to be the arch enemy. The average player really fears Infect because 10 is less than 40. And once you have a counter on everyone, you can potentially proliferate them all out of nowhere and get that huge multi-kill win, which I will know I never managed to get. So back in the box it went. Outlaws of Thunder Junction introduces us to the concept of crimes in Magic. Whenever you cast a spell or activate an ability that targets an opponent or their stuff, spells, permanents, or graveyard, you are committing a crime. So Skeleton Ship is just a crime on a stick. Interesting. I stripped out the Infected, threw in a bunch of cards that triggered off crimes, and for the first time I had a deck that actually felt capable while at the same time not being perceived as a threat for just existing at the table. So finally I could play my beloved dumb commander. Just look at the guy riding on the turtle. It's so dumb, it's so wild, I love it. And that's the story of my favourite jank deck. Alela Cunning Conqueror was the backup commander for the Wilds of Eldraine Fairies Precon. She's 2 blue-black for a legendary creature Fairy Warlock. She's a 2/4 with flying. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, create a 1/1 black Fairy Rogue creature token with flying. Whenever one or more fairies you control deal combat damage to a player, goad target creature that player controls. There are currently 9,340 Alela decks on EDH Rec. So this is just a quick one here because this is a more recent and popular commander, and I particularly like this card I've added, and the art is quite beautiful. And yes, it's more Kamigawa. Ragged Veins is 1 in the black for an enchantment aura, and it says flash, enchant creature. Whenever an enchanted creature is dealt damage, its controller loses that much life. It's played in 16 Alela decks. Not a lot else to say really. It triggers Alela's ability, but it has a lot of potential. Imagine if someone chum blocks someone else's huge creature and you drop this on it. It could be game over for them entirely. And you get a fairy token off it too. Kibo Uktabi Prince is another one of my favourite decks. It's 2 in a green for a legendary creature, Monkey Noble. It's a 2/2. Tap, each player creates a colourless artifact named Banana. With tap, sacrifice this artifact, add red or green, you gain 2 life. Whenever an artifact an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control that's an ape or a monkey. Whenever Kibo attacks, defending player sacrifices an artifact. There are currently 9,445 Kibo decks on EDH Rec. So we want to force our opponents to eat their bananas, but we also want ways to force our damage through so we can get the win. First up, Hammer Mage is 1 in a red for a creature and humus Spell Shaper. It's a 1/1. X, red, tap, discard a card, destroy all artifacts with mana value X or less. It's currently played in 256 Kibo decks. So for us, this just reads red, tap, discard a card, destroy all bananas, treasures, clues, food, and it's repeatable. So that'll teach everyone for hoarding all those artifacts. Originally, when I made this deck, it was all monkeys and apes, but I quickly found out that having a 400-pound monkey meant nothing if people could just chump block it with a 1/1. So here's Dragon Throne of Tarkir. It's 4 mana for a legendary artifact equipment. It has equip 3. Equipped creature has Defender and 2 tap. Other creatures you control gain trample and get +X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. It's currently played in 11 Kibo decks. I like to throw this on Kibo himself when he's huge and start trampling over people with all my other creatures in the deck. It's so much fun. Lastly, a card I absolutely adore in this deck, so much so that I had to get it in foil again. Yes, it's also from Kamigawa. Soul Blast is 3 red for an instant. It says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice all creatures you control. Soul Blast deals damage to any target equal to the total power of the sacrificed creatures. It's currently played in 10 Kibo decks. I like to hold on to this when somebody tries to remove Kibo or drop some kind of board wipe that's going to let them crawl back into the game somehow. In response, you lose. So why am I like this? Part of it is that I love dropping a card that people have never seen. It's part of the joy of Commander to me. We have access to all these weird and wonderful cards, and it makes me so happy being able to show people cards they've never experienced before. Also, I hope you'd agree that these cards are good choices in their respected decks. Maybe slightly overcosted, and a lot of these decks aren't winning against extremely high-powered, super-tuned decks, but in your average casual pod, they can actually be very capable. So there you go, that's some of my favourite janky cards in my own collection that I like to play with. If you run any of these cards in your decks, let me know in the comments, and also if there's any janky cards that you think I need to hear about, please let me know. I'm always happy to find new weird stuff to play with. Yeah, if you lasted this long, I'd like to thank you for watching. Like and subscribe and all those things, please. Hopefully we'll get another video soon. I've got something in the works, but it's a longer project, so you'll be seeing that very soon, I think. I hope. We'll see. I've been Tom. Catch you later. Peace. Cambridge. Useless cards. Why did I say cards like that? That's weird.